Probably no better time than right now is sort of we're coming off of the French Open to have our next guest here on signing off talking about volley for serve. This is a man who's been entrenched in the tennis world for a long time, negotiating deals around the world. He's kind of a master negotiator, but he also has a great story to tell about his own signing off and how that played a role in his life. This is a big guest for us, Yasmin.
I'm so excited. And in doing the research, I'm just going to steal another writer's work.
Oh, good. Okay.
I'm just going to call it out. Send the plagiarism emails hate to me. But I thought it was just so fitting. Ready for this?
Yeah.
When his cell phone rang, Peter was in Paris watching Roger Federer play from a third row seat, and he had to go to the French Open to negotiate a media rights issue. Every single word in that sentence is so wildly impressive. We have to bring Peter in to answer for this.
Welcome, what? Peter.
Thank you, Yasmin, and thank you, Todd. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm here in the U.S. of A. I am not, unfortunately, in Paris right now,
but you were.
I have been. Yes, I'm
watching Federer. No big deal.
Correct. No big deal. No.
Yeah, and we're going to get into all of things, but I mean, what a great time to be in the world of tennis and to have a front row seat from obviously Serena and the men and now the changing of the guard. It must have been just like, and I know you're a huge tennis fan, so at points you kind of had to probably pinch yourself in some of the rooms you found yourself in.
No, that is so true. There are days as a business and legal affairs lawyer that you make deals, you're looking at contracts, you're having negotiations, and then there are days where you get to walk into a soundstage and a green room, and there's Martina Navratilova, there's Tracy Austin, there's Jim Courier, and you're like, wait a minute, and they all say, "Hi, Peter, how are you?" And you're thinking that's surreal, and there is some pinching going on, and I'll just leave it at that. I'm a tennis person by nature. And by nature, I mean, it was the only sport I was good at as a kid. So I learned how to play, and I play it pretty well. Not well enough to have a different profession, obviously, but well enough that I understand the sport very, almost instinctively. And I have a wholesome appreciation for the way it's organized at the Grand Slam level, at the men's tour level, and the women's tour level. And so when I learned that the department head job for business and legal affairs at Tennis Channel was available, I pursued it in a fairly proactive way. And I'm grateful that I am a dozen years later, having this conversation with you, sharing, my ability to translate my work activities with my non-work activities, where I get to do both kind of simultaneously. And it's really an honor to be able to do that. And so, and I can consider myself really lucky that that's how and where I ended up at this point in my career. So it's a real treat for me.
Do you think that you are enjoying tennis less now that it is your job, and coming home at night to be like, oh, am I really going to watch tennis, or is it the best of both worlds?
It's definitely the best of both worlds, where I get the conversation when I'm playing with my pro and the folks that I hit with regularly. I get two conversations. One is, oh my God, thank you. We just saw this X, Y, and Z match. This is so great. Your coverage was so great. I love the commentators. And then I get the other flip side of that is, I just signed up for Tennis Channel Plus or T2 or something, and I couldn't find this match. What happened? And that, I would say,
fix it, Peter. Fix it.
Fix it, exactly. And that is what I like to call the embarrassment of riches, where we have more content than we have platforms. And that wasn't the case when I got to the network. And so it's been a real treat to watch my colleagues juggle that grid and that math problem, really, of like, how many tournaments do you have? How many matches per tournament? How many platforms do we have? Where do we prioritize? Which players are going where, and what platform? And how do we make the consumer, number one, understand what we're doing, and number two, want to sign up for all of the different ways to watch tennis? And so that's really that's where we are in this part of the world, where different than when we were doing a lot more of rights acquisitions early on. Now we're still doing a lot of rights acquisitions because the deals are never permanent, obviously. But you do get the sense of now, great, if I get rights for this particular platform, I also want rights for that other platform and this third platform and maybe a fourth platform, because I don't want people not to find tennis through a Tennis Channel platform.
Right. Yeah. It's the home for tennis. You know, it's so funny.
Right.
My wife and her family, they're born and raised in Poland right now, and my knowledge of tennis is paper thin. So you know, but I know there's a Polish a woman right now who's at the top of her game, and
Correct.
my father-in-law specifically loves to follow her matches wherever she plays around the world. And I think, you know, he lives in northeastern Philadelphia, and he's able to now to watch that. And I think, wow, you know, and probably credit to you and your team and people in the Tennis Channel to think that someone like that has the ability and availability to follow a specific star for whatever reason, whenever they play around the world. I mean, that's something that was really unheard of, you know, 15 years ago. It just didn't happen.
No, that's right. And I think between the advent of our different platforms for the, you know, for here and social media and some of our international expansion, you're getting now a flavor of our brand of storytelling around the sport. And I'm going to apologize in advance if I mispronounce the player's name. It's Iga Swiatek, who's the number one player out of Poland. And I was watching her earlier today. That is one spectacularly good tennis player, and I will just there's the court, then this, and she has both the foot speed, the stroke production, and, you know, as Martina Navratilova would say, the tennis IQ, and that her tennis IQ is so above and off the charts. She knows where to be on the court at the right time. You think her opponent's hitting something she's not going to get to, she's already there. It's one of those, you know, it's a joy to watch. So
it is. It's so funny you use the word joy, because like I said, I've never been a huge tennis fan, but if it was on, I would watch or whatever. But now I am. It has sort of got me when I see her. She's on. You know, I'll watch. My wife will ask to watch, and we'll watch it together. So it kind of is this infectious joy that you have exposure to that, you know, the average consumer just didn't have not too long ago.
No, and I will say, as a vehicle for being part of the sport, what you also get is the joy, but you get the roller coaster, because there's very few players that can just come out there and just win every single point, have no challenge at all, and go home. It just doesn't work. The sport doesn't really live in that space. So when you see them struggle and you see the emotions coming out, and you see them like, oh my God, I just made I double faulted on an important point. What do I do? How do I recover? And watching that like live drama unfold is really quite compelling as both a tennis player and as somebody who enjoys spectating. So you see it, and you watch the evolution of championship mentality, and watching the process unfold. And it's really, it's a wonderful learning exercise to see how you do problem solving. Tennis as a metaphor for life is very much a limited time exercise in problem solving.
I mean, with problem solving, I know you mentioned storytelling and all of the content. What is it like in the room when it comes to deciding which story you're going to follow? Because you can't cover everything. You can't be in all of the places.
That's right.
And you're playing God a little bit, right?
So that's, you know, the choices that we make as a programmer and a broadcaster are really challenging. And they're challenging because they're very compelling. And there's a lot of compelling stories. Yasmin, you're absolutely right. We do have to put a lot of thought and effort into figuring it out. Some of the stories write themselves, like retirements. So we follow Serena during Serena Williams' retirement. The rise of Iga Swiatek, we're following that. Some of the stories are pretty present, but nobody really had a sense of who, you know, Taylor Fritz is an American guy now in the top 10, but he wasn't for a period of time. So we had done a few pieces and features behind the scenes with him, and as his stock was rising in his results, all of a sudden people are like, oh, we've seen him. Where have we seen him before? That's right. We did some Tennis Channel features on him. We had him at Indian Wells having a conversation we did this feature we call Golf Cart Confessionals, because these events, you put them in a golf cart and you drive them to their court. And so we had a camera in and we were asking them.
Yeah.
So we had Golf Cart Confessionals, which is kind of a fun, it's not a very long feature, obviously, but it's very engaging, because then somebody will say like, what, and we'll come up with questions. I don't want to misquote my colleagues here, but their questions are like, what's your favorite food in the desert? Or what's your favorite, like, why do you like being in Indian Wells versus some other city? Or what's your favorite thing about California? And whatever kind of question comes to mind. And sometimes the answers are fairly, they're fine, and they're kind of behind the scenesy. And sometimes they're really funny. And sometimes the players are really, really funny, and they're engaged and they're relaxed, because you're not on the court. It's very, very, it's a nice thing to do. And to reveal the, behind the warrior, right? That should be the name of our feature, Behind the Warrior, because they're out there battling, across the net from each other, trying to, be the last person standing. And so there's a certain battle, both physical, mental, emotional, all of those components. But before that, and they're just kind of like getting ready, and then after, and we get them on the desk, and they're different, and they're relaxed, and they're like people.
Right.
They go from there, like, everyone's like, wait, they like,
you're just like us.
Yeah.
Right. And right.
You turn off the switch. Yeah.
There you right. And I want to say I don't remember which kind of entertainment celebrity magazine used to have a feature, or maybe they still do, like Celebrities, They're Just Like Us.
Yeah.
So when you get somebody on our desk, and Steve Weissman or Chanda Rubin says something about like, what are you watching? What do you watch to relax? And somebody mentions, a certain TV show that's very, very popular, or they went to the movies and they saw something really interesting, and you think, oh, wow, they are just like, they're people. I watched that movie. I watched that show. I'm just like, that world-class player, like that kind of thing.
It's so interesting. You've had just a phenomenal career. You've had a number of different, times where you sort of signed off from one job to the next, but sort of looking back in your sort of biggest, most influential sort of signing off moment, what would that be for you in your life? What was the biggest change element that you went through?
Well, the biggest change in element is probably, I would say, there's probably two that I would say. One we've talked about professionally, which was my leaving the Konami position that I really enjoyed to jump into Tennis Channel. I think the other one that is most kind of life altering is probably my battle with cancer, which I dealt with during my time at Warner Brothers. And I want to first compliment my colleagues at Warner Brothers at the time, who were incredibly supportive and incredibly gracious through the entire I don't want to say ordeal, but all right, I'll use ordeal. It was an ordeal.
Yeah.
And from diagnosis to treatment was about a year. So diagnosis through treatment took about a year. And there were some lasting effects from it. But what I found the most challenging through the whole thing was, first, when I got the diagnosis, the first one was on my birthday, which was, I was never a big birthday person, but I really became a birthday person.
You're not going to be right.
Right.
Yeah,
So
you're not going to leave that moment and not have that
No.
impact you.
Right. So as far as that goes, and I think the next piece of that experience I went right into denial. I went, there's the classic stages of whether it's grief or trauma or whatever, and I thought, okay, well, this is not happening to me. This is somebody else. But okay, I'll go to this doctor. I'll go to that doctor. I'll just kind of go through the motions as if. And then as it became a little more serious, as they had a little trouble diagnosing me, and so I had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which manifested in a tumor in my neck, and so the neck became more visible, and once they did figure it out, and I got put into I had surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation. So I like to call the triple crown of treatment, with a host of misery along the way, because
Yeah.
this will come as a surprise to no one. None of it's good. None of it's
Right.
fun. There's that. And so I took a bit of both a aggressive timestamp approach to it. I'm like, okay, I have to do this many treatments, this much time, and I will be fine. And I kept thinking to myself, I'm going to be fine. And I never lived in the space of I'm not going to be fine. Now, that was really good intellectually, but emotionally, it doesn't work. It stops
Yeah.
for a period of time. And one of the best pieces of advice I got during this process was from one of my colleagues at Warner Brothers, who had just come back from her own battle of cancer. And she said to me, look, Peter, here's what's going to happen. You're going to go through some really, really dark places. It's going to be miserable. Just be patient. You're going to come out of it. You will come out of it. And I thought, what is she talking about? I don't even have, and I'm like thinking, because again, I'm in denial. So I go through the process, and as the misery, the part that Paulette was talking about kind of manifested, I thought, oh, this is what she was talking about. Now I understand. And
she was the captain warning me about
Yes.
these seas. Yeah.
That's correct. And here it comes. Here comes the tidal wave.
Yeah.
And you better hold your breath, or it's not
Right.
right.
Right. Learn to swim. Yeah.
Right. And so the process of going through it, and all of both the small little things you have to manage your life around, to the kind of larger conceit of, what am I actually doing? I'm not in the office. I'm home in pajamas. I'm bald. I am cold. I am throwing up. I mean, all those, all the things that you think about.
Yeah.
And at some point you think, well, I am going to finish this, and I am going to get through this. And I did. And what it taught me when I kind of rounded that corner and things started to be okay, and my scan started to become clean, and I thought a couple of things. One thing was, I never want anybody to go through that. That was the first thing that was the first kind of paradigm shift in my head. The second thing I thought was, show some grace to people that you wouldn't have shown grace to before, because people that didn't know you wanted you to have some comfort and have some grace. So return that, pay it forward, kind of be a better human than you were when you started this process. And I think the third thing was, don't deny yourself opportunity. And I think that piece and that opportunity is, and I'm going to use that as an overarching concept, it made me a little more proactive. It made me a little more willing to try things and willing to take chances. And I'm not talking about skydiving without a parachute, nothing like that. I'm not talking about, don't go for the death wish kind of thing, right? Right. But if you're somebody, if you wanted to try a new food, go to a restaurant you never would have thought to go, do it. What do you like? Why would you stop? Now, quick side note, there was a loss of taste buds for a period of time. So there was a need to recover. No. I need to make sure that they were still working. So there's a little bit of that. Right. But
what? I'm sorry.
I know.
I know. I'm assuming everything was terrible, but the inability to enjoy a burger is just sounds like the worst.
Yeah. Well, thankfully that's in the rearview mirror. So that's the good news. And I think my taste buds came back a little better, to be perfectly honest.
Oh.
I feel like I have a little bit more refinement and a little more ability to pick flavors out. That also could be in my head. I could be making that up, but I do
maybe
feel
just savoring it more now. Maybe.
Yeah, I do say. You know what, Todd? That's what it is. I do savor things more, and I do find that things that I may have taken for granted, I don't, and things that I'm kind of much more appreciative. But it also means, like, going back to the pay it forward part, I want to be better. I want to help people. I want to make that part of what I do, in the limited spare time I have. And so I've been able to do some volunteer work, some fundraising, things like that are part of the pay it forward concept. And I'm never shy to give support to people that are struggling with it as well. And there were some other colleagues at Warner's that were struggling, and people, that you come across in your daily life. And it's hard, but it's, I'm one of the lucky ones. And I try always to remember that as one of the things, a moment in my life that kind of I lived through in a net positive way, that I really decided that going forward, be better.
But, it's amazing that there are so many things that happen in our lives that at the moment are very, very difficult. And and life threatening, and but getting through them in some way, somehow, creates this sort of this new chapter, and there's that immediate motivation to say, I'm gonna take life by the reins, and I'm gonna do things that maybe I didn't do before. But my question now is for you. This has been 12 years plus. Is it still a motivating factor for you? When you find yourself on a Tuesday and you kind of, maybe it's a bad day, something didn't go right. Are you still able to reach back through that time, or is it not really a motivating factor that you can still use in your life?
So I will say that the motivation is definitely still there. And it's still there as at this point in my career because the sport keeps changing, the sport keeps growing, and the way we deliver the content keeps growing. So I'm not short on challenges.
Right.
Some of course, the deal making I do is can be a little repetitive time and time again. I can look at a production release, I can look at a talent deal for something kind of ordinary or run of the mill. But then when a new platform comes up and I think, well, I have to do some serious thinking about and what we're going to do, I'm motivated to use those parts of my brain that aren't, the kind of classic fill in the blank, use our templates kind of, run of the mill kind of legal work, and be more creative, more thoughtful, and more interpretive. So there's definitely some serious motivation there. And I kind of like the idea that we're at an inflection point where we keep thinking, if there's more platforms, more content, more ways to consume, how are we going to do there? How are we going to do it? What does it look like? And I love that there's no one answer to that. I really do.
Well, speaking of all the streaming and all of the content, if I spend another night scrolling through every single streaming device, we spent 45 minutes last night, 45 minutes trying to decide what to watch. And then I was like, I want to go to bed. It's 9:30. We've wasted the whole night.
Yeah.
So we want to know what are you consuming when you're not at the Weather Channel, or excuse me, Tennis Channel, when you're not watching the Tennis Channel. You can watch weather too. It's raining here, so I'm very consumed with the rain situation. What are you consuming while you are on your off time?
Wow. Okay, that's a great question. My non-tennis content consumption. So I think I can things that. All right, let me think. All right, there's two that come to mind. One I can watch in short spurts, and one I need to sit down and be immersed in. The one that's in short bits is the Junior Bake Off, which is the Great British Bake Off but kids version. And so they have these, anywhere from 9 to 15-year-old kids going through the same challenges that they do and all the Great British Bake Off. There's a signature challenge, a technical challenge, and a showstopper. And I think to myself, at that age, was I that good in the kitchen? And the answer is a resounding no. Absolutely not. I'm good. I was good, but not that good. And so watching that interaction is great. And because the Bake Off shows, if you've ever watched them, they're competition shows that people are really nice to each other.
They are.
And that's really, and somebody finishes and they have who needs help? I have an extra minute. Oh, can you help me? I can't, the kids now, I'm too short to reach the freezer. That's kind of funny. And they're helping each other up. And it's really nice.
That's amazing.
When you see something like an epic failure, no one rejoices in it. People are they're when the cake collapses or something.
Cake collapses.
My son watches that sometimes, so I know. Yeah.
So that's really that. I really enjoy that because you can watch one challenge at a time. If you only have 10 minutes over here, you can just kind of segment that show out. That's pretty easy. The one that I get immersed in would be and we're just finishing it, is Picard on Paramount Plus, which is they finished the season 3. And if you've watched any of the Star Trek shows. This one it started with Next Generation. It's Patrick Stewart, and this is accelerating in their Starfleet timeline. I'm just smart enough to mess this up, and so I don't want anybody, giving me grief that I messed up the timeline. Yeah, I don't want to track you telling me I messed up the timeline. So I'm going to apologize in advance. But they ended up for this last season, bringing the entire crew of The Next Generation back, all the lead actors. And it's been really nice to see that. And the quality of writing, the work, the kind of, then the effects work now, the visuals are just stunning. And the storytelling was great. And so I'm now kind of looking forward to this next version is Star Trek, the original series, which is, if you remember the one that aired with Shatner and Nimoy and Captain Kirk, there's one that takes place before that with Captain Pike. So that one's called Strange New Worlds. Strange New Worlds. That one, season 2, is airing, I think, next month. So I'm looking forward to that, because that's also now in the timeline in Star Trek. It's before the one from the TV show from the 60s, but in 2023, with the effects work, it does not look like the kind of random, I'm going to say, models and puppets that go across the screen as they're trying to make it look like outer space. And so so being in that space is, I enjoy that, because it's so not anything that we deal with. And so I kind of like when my content tends to be things that have nothing to do with what I'm doing. So I know this is a shock. I don't live on a starship. And I know I'm not a 10-year-old baker. These are facts. These are true facts.
I love it. We got 10-year-old bakers and a Jean-Luc Picard reference here. So Peter, well done. Absolutely. I have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the kids of a certain generation know him as Professor X from the X-Men.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So, and when they found out that he could walk, they were like, wait a minute, he's not in a wheelchair? I don't understand. Like, okay, it's called acting.
I didn't know that.
Like, yeah, right.
There was a time when he was, I have content to consume, clearly.
Charles Xavier was in, that's an X-Men down. We can go down that rabbit hole another day.
Well, I'm a big fan of his. I actually saw him when he was on Broadway for Tempest. He was, he's like one of these actors just with his, and also with the accent that gets you too. As an American, I just feel like anyone who's got an accent, you're just like, oh, this person's more intelligent than I am.
You're smarter than I am. Immediately. That doesn't matter the accent. You're smarter than I am.
That is the bias. I think that is universally shared by those of us without that accent naturally.
Well, Peter, I can't thank you enough. Gosh, I feel like this time has flown by, because God, there's so many more things that I sort of want to get to, but I guess we gotta leave it with ourselves and the audience, hopefully wanting more. Maybe there's a part 2 down the line for us all, because you've had a fascinating career and so many signing off moments professionally, but also your signing off moment personally, and how your health scare shaped your future. And thank you for that. I appreciate the trust in sort of sharing that with us, and having that courage to talk about it publicly.
And sharing your story is everything.
Well, thank you guys for making this a terrific conversation, and allowing me the privilege of sharing that with you. And it's been a real pleasure for me. So thank you guys.